Good evening. My name is Alyssa Jackson, and according to our topic, we're going to talk about home and school connections for ESOL students, or in this case, EL students. Now, for those who may not know, what exactly are EL and ESOL students? Well, EL or ESOL students are students who speak English as a second language, and it's our job as educators to help them not only become accustomed to American culture, but to also to be accustomed to how to speak English, as a second language, how to be able to communicate with their new language, understanding the values, the standards, pretty much what they need to do in order to master the language, so that way we can make sure they become comfortable. Now, what about with cultural influence? How can that affect them? Well, as a English teacher, the way we have to where we influence culture into their learning is all about making those connections to where they can learn from those stories. What are their stories, lessons that can relate to them? So, for example, my ESOL co-teacher, who has just helped our ESOL students celebrate Hispanic Historical Month, well, historical Hispanic month, excuse me. And pretty much it's to where that we want our students to become more accustomed to learn about people who pretty much relate to their culture, whether they're singers, celebrities, scholars, etc. But to also remember the purpose of what they stood for, as it helps to inspire them and to make them think, okay, if they can do this in America, maybe I can do it too. And sometimes it can be to where sometimes students who are trying to make those connections may need a little boost in their confidence. Because you got to think, who do we want to look up to? Now, sometimes they'll say, I like to look up to this person. I like to look up to that person. As a way to always feel comfortable, but always to feel like they need someone to help them in the long run. And with cultural influence, pretty much that goes into one of my discussions or one of my articles I found. And this is called Cultural Competence in Education. And this is by Shemika Moore. And so she pretty much gives a good definition about what is cultural competence. And it says in her article, as it pertains to the field of education, Diller and Moll, authors of Cultural Competence, a primer for educators, states, cultural competence focuses on the ability to successfully teach students who come from cultures other than our own. It entails developing personal and interpersonal awareness and sensitivities, develop certain bodies of cultural knowledge, and mastering a set of skills taken together underlie effective cross-cultural teaching. So in other words, it's to where we need to take this student's culture and American culture and find ways to combine it into our teaching, almost to where we're making sure like, hey, we don't want our students to feel left out. We do not want our students to feel like they are losing part of their culture even they came from a different country. We want to make sure they carry it with them because it is a symbolism of making sure they remember where they came from, because we have students across every country who are pulled at random to try to find a better life in America, because we represent the melting pot to where all cultures mix together like a big bowl of soup. And so they should not remember where they come from. And that's what cultural competence is talking about. How we can make sure we can combine cultures together and not separate them. And so what exactly is the role of cultural in student learning? Well, the culture comes from how we represent it to them. And so going back to my ESOL co-teacher, she makes sure that our students, our ESOL students, always remember where they came from, but to always make connections to where it can relate to them. They can understand it from their own perspective. We break it down, their curriculum, into a different language to where it actually helps them. Or even to where if we need to pull grammar, let's say from Spanish, to where we take a look how their grammar is in Spanish versus how it is in English. And we can take a look to see, do they have any struggles with understanding grammar in a different language? If so, how can we help them do that when they do English? So altogether, we find ways to form a bridge. If we form the bridge, we can help tie those in. Because altogether, it comes down to how we want our students to not feel left out and not feel like they need to struggle in order to do what is right and not do what is so complicated. Now, supporting the needs of EL students in the classroom. So, how can we support them in the classroom? Like, what exactly, as an English teacher, can I do? Well, by working with my co-teacher, my ESOL co-teacher, pretty much what we do is we pretty much create a plan to where we can have them be taught in a big group with a lot of students, or if we use the back table, we can pull our ESOL students to the back table and have more one-on-one small groups to where the lesson is differentiated to their needs, along with any accommodations to where they need text-to-speech to listen to the audio. They need to have different wording in order to break down what exactly they are reading to learn and learning to read. They need to be out of the classroom to where they're not distracted by their peers, all together to where it helps them understand, hey, I need to focus, but maybe I need to put myself in a different situation or a different setting. Because altogether, that helps to pretty much make connections, whether it's social, emotional, and maybe cultural for a reason. Or let's say that we need to have a translator to where it's, if one of our students' English is not the fully best, if we have another student who is not afraid to be a translator, then they can help us translate. But also, we do have a translator. We don't have them on campus as much, but if we need to have them come into the classroom to help us translate what the student is trying to tell us, so that way they do not have the need to use Google Translate all the time, then it helps them to feel more comfortable, but also help them build confidence to where they'll be able to communicate with us in English without needing to have a translator. Now, home and school connections. It says, how might family and community practices, funds of knowledge, influence language learning? Well, going into that, we recently just had a parent night, for example. And for parent night, pretty much we have it to where we invite all parents to come to our school, and we want them to have the opportunity to make sure that their students, their children, have the opportunity to really get involved in their school, to where they can test them, they can quiz them, and really just show that they care and that they're really, truly part of their kids' lives. Because we never know the full situation of everyone's home situation. But at the same time, this gives parents who have ESOL children a chance to make sure that they are making those connections at school. They are finding different ways to help them, even if they may not understand the material. We can find ways to accommodate for them and break it down to them to where they can still get their studying at home, but make sure that we work one-on-one together and make sure that we can do things that are necessary. And so that goes back into an article that I found by Teacher Vision, but this is by Teacher Vision staff. Strategies for teaching culturally diverse students. And again, this helps parents on making sure are their kids being taught based off of what the teacher is applying to them. And so what exactly are we applying to them that can pretty much help parents make sure that, hey, is my English may not be good, but is my child still getting everything situated? So going to strategies for teaching culturally diverse students. So when I was looking at the many factors, majority of the many factors I see talk about how personal and academic relationships between students and their teachers can be influential to where forming core relationships of learning for the teachers and students pretty much comes from the subject matter about how can they interact better in the classroom, meaning how can they form a better relationship. And that goes into how parents and teachers form their relationships as well. And also, when it comes to current behaviors and instructional strategies, it enables teachers to build stronger teaching and learning relationship with their culturally diverse students. And many of these behavior strategies exemplify standard practices of good teaching, and others are specific to working with students from diverse cultures. So in other words, when it's talking about how can we form those connections when it comes to family and community practices, funds of knowledge. So altogether, it comes from how we make those connections. The connections I'm talking about is how can we have the classroom teaching connect to families at home, because it goes into like strategies of how we can build and foster strong family community. Like for example, invite them to parent night. You can invite them to parent night, and that can actually help parents be involved to where you can give them pamphlets, you can give them a brochure, you can give them like a little textbook to help their child become more accustomed to the culture, but also to become accustomed to English to where they're used to speaking it all the time. Because altogether, it's about making sure that you're practicing on how to make sure that your child is not getting behind, but they're staying ahead. Because overall, what we want for our EL students is to not be behind, to not feel left out, but to feel welcome and accepted to where they're doing the best they can and we're helping them do the best they can. Because that's always the main goal as an educator, and for real, for any educator in general. But overall, I do thank you all for listening to this video, and I pray that you all have a blessed evening. Thank you so much. Goodbye.